recently, I decided that I wanted to get my life in order, right? So, you know, I've been kind of asking myself a lot of big questions, because people say, you know, they say life's a journey. You never stop growing, you never stop learning. The trouble is, I only really work well to deadlines. So what I've decided is I'm going to get all that sort of self-growth and you know, personal exploration done in the next sort of 6 months, next couple of fiscal quarters. And that way, I can, you know, just sort of tidy that away, I can be done with it, and then I can kind of just coast my way to the grave, as I am, comfy. So, you know, I've been asking myself all these big questions, you know, who am I? Why am I? Where am I? You know, but I think the biggest question I really want to ask myself is, if I could time travel, what time period would I time travel to and why? Right? Because that's the question everyone's asking nowadays, isn't it? All the parties, shindigs, wakes. So, you know, and listen, I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, Jonathan, my handsome friend whom I love unconditionally. You're overcomplicating it. The answer is obviously 1943. The invention of the slinky. First of all, I love you too. And second of all, you're right. 1943, invention of the slinky. Humanity peaked with the invention of the slinky. It's been all downhill from there, which is great news for the slinky. You know, slight hitch. I don't know if you guys love history, but if you were to crack open a book about 1943, and you know, you flip past the section about the invention of the slinky, past the bit about the cultural impacts of the slinky, past the bit about the constitutional and political implications of the slinky, you would find out that the slinky, it was something of a bright light in an otherwise fairly dark time. So I would say the 1940s are probably out, which leaves only one other obvious answer, right? The 1920s. You know, because sure, the 1920s, they had just as much death and destruction and disease and prejudice and general misery as any other decade, but they also had this. And like 5 white guys in New York were loving it! Which is very convenient, because that's who all the media set in the 1920s is about, right? In fact, one of the most fun things about the 1920s is that every piece of media set in the 1920s starts in the exact same way, you know? The year was 1929. The markets were booming, the parties were wild, and we only had to wait 24 more years for the polio vaccine. Yes, sir, things were good. And for me in particular, your relatable main character, who also earns in the top 3% of incomes. Yep, I've just struck it big with some very safe land investments down in Florida. It's one for the economic historians. Yeah, times were good, and there was no way this bubble was gonna burst. And it never did. It never does. In these films, they spend all this time sort of foreshadowing this great historical catastrophe of the Great Depression. And then it never fucking shows up in the film. It's amazing. I love it. You know, I wish more films had the freaking stones to pull a move like that. You know? Like a movie about the Black Death. You know, the year was 1349. I don't know why an English peasant would speak like this. the peasants were subsisting, the markets were stagnating, and we only had to wait 604 more years for the polio age. Yes, sire. Things were good. And for me in particular, I just saved up enough money to move my family to the big city. This dilapidated little piece of paradise was right in the middle of the rat quarter. You know, opposite the open cesspit. The perfect place to raise my immunocompromised son and flea-ridden daughter. Yup, things were looking up. And there was no way this weird boil under my arm was gonna burst.